pieces together after a team-building exercise bowling went awry. I think
this is
honestly, I think it's the first team-building exercise I've ever been a part of where I left the event further apart. Me and Greg got better.
Wild's sore loser. Wild's greatly underestimates my ability to step up under pressure.
Unbelievable.
And Wilds also, and I quote, after losing $100 to me in a bowling match where he was a 10-1 favorite, said to me, I know you think this is fun. It's not fun. I'm not joking.
This guy was like, the salary cap you do. He's like, the spare. I'm like, dude. To have to walk him through what the spares mean is just.
He's still mad.
Brew, we know you're the Ravens guy, so I'm looking for a trifecta of information from you since we know.
Well, I think it's going to be too cold for my boys. I mean, wait. I'm tired of hearing about the real feel. All right, Lamar, John Harbaugh, Derrick Henry, Roquan Smith, all of the crew are like, look, we're playing football. I don't care if it's 30 below. We come to play football, and they will go to win football.
Lamar is, when he is saying that, to be fair, Lamar is bundled up under a ski mask.
That's fine.
Indoors.
That's fine. No excuses. I'm in the no excuses.
Okay.
Zay Flowers, hopefully he plays. If he doesn't, no excuses. Go get it done, Ravens. Ravens will win this game. And what I like about them is, I had a checklist of things I wanted them to work on. Get the defense ready. And this is from the early in the season, right? True. They got the defense together. Justin Tucker, we didn't see him last week much, but looks like he's at least gotten better, back to, I'm not going to say he's back to what he was.
Not headed
but
to
he
the
made
glue
a few
factory.
Right. He's made a few 50-yarders recently. The penalties, they have chopped. Last game, they had 3 penalties for 14 yards. They've cut that down, so I think they're more mature. Lamar has always this year been, that was great, but we're on to the next one because we got bigger fish to fry. So I think they're ready. And finally, Nick, I think they have figured out that as great as Lamar is, you got something special as well at your tailback in Derrick Henry. The last 4 games, he's averaging 158 yards on 24 carries. So they're giving it to him more than they have all season. He's rewarding them with big yardage. We know he ran over the Bills last time for 199 yards. I'm not necessarily predicting that. But, Nick, what I think is going to happen, the cold weather and if there's a lot of wind too, I think will necessitate on both. Well, on both. I think the Ravens want to run anyway, but I think both teams are going to be more run-centric if the weather is like that.
That's fair.
And what the Ravens did last week against Pittsburgh, which is a great team against the run and a great defensive team, period, a lot of times they had an extra lineman. They had 2 tight ends. They put Patrick Ricard in the backfield, 300-pounder fullback, to open things up for Henry. And the Bills are kind of a small defense.
That part is true.
Right, and they like to play the 5 defensive backs. So if they do that, I just think that the Ravens are going to be able to bully them, and that's what I think leads them to victory.
So the Ravens, when the Ravens have the ball, they have a massive size advantage. Yeah. That part's that's undeniable. The Bills have a somewhat undersized defense, and the Ravens have one of the most physically imposing offenses. So I agree with that. I mean, that's factually true. It's not even an opinion, but I also agree that that is a critical part, potentially critical piece of this game. I think you might agree with me on this. The more trustworthy quarterback is Josh Allen in this spot. I mean, we can argue about who's better, who had the better season.
He's been better in the playoffs over his career.
He has earned more. So, to me, I actually don't think this is that difficult of a pick. With that said, I think it'll be a good game, so obviously either team could win. But one team has the more trustworthy quarterback, and they're at home. I will go with that team. The Bills have lost once in 3 months, and it was a classic against a team that I think is excellent, and everyone acknowledges at this point really, really good in the Rams. Brew has correctly pointed out the Ravens have had way more opportunity and more success against playoff teams, but that, I don't want to say it's a quirk of the schedule. What is true is this. As far as teams that were either alive for the playoffs going into the final week or won at least 8 games, Bills played those teams 10 times and went 7-3. The Ravens played those teams 12 times and went 9-3. You know, and so it's not as if, to me, the Bills were just, you know, filling up on cupcakes throughout the year. They didn't beat as many playoff teams, and they did beat both of the number 1 seeds. And so the argument to me for Baltimore is mostly they played once already and Baltimore crushed them. And I'm not throwing that out, but I also think that game's the first offensive play of the game from Baltimore was an 87-yard Derrick Henry run. Mm-hmm. Derrick Henry it was a bizarre game when you look at it. Like, Baltimore scored 35 points. They had, I wrote it down, 70 yards total, 5 catches total from all of their tight ends and wide receivers in that game. Justice Hill is the one. It was Derrick Henry was the beginning, middle, and end of that game offensively. He had 2 touchdowns, would have had 3, fumbled at the, on the goal line on one, and I think it was Ricard. Ended up falling on it. I don't think Derrick Henry's going to have 200 yards again. And I think that is, that set the template for that game in week 4. So I'm not throwing it out. I just don't think that's duplicable. So I think they are. I think people have.
Buffalo's healthier too. In fairness, Milano's back.
Right. The only team in the playoffs healthier than Buffalo is actually Kansas City right now. And so I think these are 2 A- teams. I'm still, and we'll talk about it more throughout the show, I'm sure, nervous about Lamar and not nervous about Josh. And the Bills are at home. So to me, that is enough to make it tilt it in the favor. And where I disagree with the Pro Bowl voters. I disagree that the Ravens have a 5x more top-end talent than the Bills, with the Ravens having 9 Pro Bowlers and the Bills having 2. And you take the quarterbacks off for each of them, 8-1. That, to me, if I really thought the talent was that disparate in this game, maybe I'd feel that way, but I don't.
Would you agree on paper? I mean, that's paper. On paper, the Ravens have the better team as far as Pro Bowlers, marquee names, all of that. Just looking at the rosters, you would say the Ravens have a better roster.
I think part of that, though, is because we don't really value offensive linemen. And I think the
Ravens' offensive line is
good. I think the Bills' offensive line is the best of any team in the league other than Philly. And I just
Detroit's is good.
Let me just say the best in the AFC. And so I'm not going to sit up here and act like I will be shocked if the Ravens win. That'd be ridiculous. They're a really good team. What I am shocked by is how nobody seems to care the games in Buffalo. I'm really that to me is and maybe this is something that it's not as important these days in the NFL. My whole life growing up, the entire point of why every regular season game mattered so much in the NFL was, man, you could go years without winning a road playoff game. You know what I mean? The home field advantage was so important. And I just think Buffalo at night in freezing cold temperatures with a team whose quarterback might get antsy again, I like Buffalo.
We've seen Buffalo lose. I think part of that, why people are discounting that, they've lost their last 2 games at home in this round of the playoffs. So
that's what I'm buying. The narrative is around the 2 QBs, and Lamar was asked about having a relationship with Josh. Love it.
That's why I rock with Lamar Jackson. Old school, baby. We ain't trying to have a meal.
Oh, we golf. We get out there.
No,
it's just
taking
great.
shots at Mahomes?
Oh no, we're having a blast. I text him after games every game.
I'm trying to beat you.
I love it.
Period. All right? That's it. And what's the question?
The question, I know you get excited by the quote. A win would mean more for which quarterback?
Lamar. It would mean a ton for both. But Josh, first of all, both of them have been here before. So next week, if they get whoever wins and presumably plays Kansas City, that would mean obviously much more. But this would mean more for Lamar because Lamar is the guy with the hardware. Lamar is the 2-time MVP. And Josh has not won an MVP, and we'll see if he wins one. But if Lamar becomes a 3-time MVP, he's already the only 2-time MVP with no Super Bowl or championship wins.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so that in and of itself is pressure. And Lamar is the guy that not just Nick might be the loudest, but a lot of people, and even I acknowledge that he has struggled in the playoffs. Now, much of it was in the past or years ago, but still, it was fair to question going into the playoffs, was Lamar going to be Lamar? And I'm saying, you know what? He was last week, obviously. He has been 2 of his last 3 games. And Kansas City's just a good team. He played fine, but not great. But those questions are about him. Josh doesn't have those questions. And I just think I think he's overmatched. I think Josh is great. I think the team is overmatched. Nick thinks it's a simple pick for Buffalo. To me, it's a fairly simple pick for Baltimore. I'm not saying I will be surprised if the Bills win. I won't be shocked. They are a very good team. I respect them. But I just think with Lamar is the guy that at this point, like we've talked about Josh before, Lamar is a definite Hall of Famer. If his career ended this year, he'd be a Hall of Famer. Josh, I think, is en route to that, but he would not be.
Right, but isn't that an argument then for that Josh needs this?
No, because winning this game doesn't make Josh a Hall of Famer. Like, Lamar's the guy, because of the 2 MVPs, he has to validate them with the Super Bowl. Josh doesn't have to validate anything yet.
So I think because the narrative, because most people, even in mid-January, in my opinion, are still underrating the talent on the Bills. Mm-hmm. This is almost being, and Brew has called the Bills repeatedly, he's not the only one of the best one-man shows he has seen in the NFL. It feels like the narrative is it would take a Herculean Josh Allen performance to overcome this juggernaut in Baltimore, even though the Bills had the better record. They're the higher seed. The game's at home. And so I really think the meat of this question is the inverse. Who would a loss be more devastating for? Because we can say a win would mean a ton for either of these guys, and I tend to agree with Brew because there is more skepticism led by many. Myself is maybe the Pied Piper of that about Lamar in the playoffs, that a win in this round would mean more for Lamar than for Josh, because we've seen Josh play great in this round and win. We've seen him play great in this round and lose in one of the most famous games ever. And Lamar, we've never seen Lamar play consecutive good playoff games. It's just, you know what I mean? The 2 times he had won the following round, they scored a combined 13 points. One was in Buffalo in this round. He threw a pick 6 to lose the game. That was, like as Bruce said, to be fair, 4 seasons ago. So I understand that. The real question is, on the losing side of it, who would get skewered? And I don't see a scenario where Josh gets skewered. You've said it. You said the other. You said the. I mean, I guess if anyone has the Justin Herbert game, then I suppose. But take that. You know, if somebody just has.
If he just loses.
1 touchdown, 1 pick, mediocre across the board. Josh, people are going to say, man, Josh carried this team here.
That's right.
Overachieved. Yeah. That is not going to be the narrative for Lamar, because the media has decided this team is way better than their record says they are. That this team has been an A-list Super Bowl contender all year long. And because Derrick Henry's sitting there with now on the season over 2,000 yards rushing with the playoff game plus the regular season. So that to me is the conversation Monday is probably the lead of most shows going to be about the loser of this game than the winner of this game.
So our Josh, not Josh Allen, came up with a scenario on if both quarterbacks won. So the first graphic to us, if we have it, if Lamar wins Sunday, and Josh also gave him the MVP, this is what Lamar's versus Josh would look like. Again, this is if Lamar won. It would feel like a fulcrum point for Josh. Now, for Lamar.
Yep.
Now, if it flips.
And they'd be 1-1 against each other in the playoffs.
So, so nice and even.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, sorry. Yeah.
Okay. Then if it flips, if Josh wins, Josh moves to 7-5, 2 AFC conference game appearances, and he gets the MVP. But that 3-5 really sticks out. That's why I would say it would mean more for Lamar to win, just to get rid of that 3 and 5.
Well,
he can't lose this game.
Well, I think that the bottom, love Josh, love you. The bottom row of the graphic should be static. This game's gonna have no impact on it.
No, we would just kind of
But I think
the most extreme.
Right? No,
if it all came up Josh or it all came up Lamar.
So I think the most devastating version of this graphic is, in my opinion, the one where Josh Allen wins. And in 2 weeks later, Lamar Jackson
wins the MVP.
Gets MVP. That is like that will be a weird spot for a lot of folks. You know what I mean? That if Josh, particularly if Lamar plays poorly and they lose, but even if he doesn't, like we saw it happen, not quite to the same extreme, but last year where it was kind of for the quarterbacks, Lamar, Dak, and Purdy, at the end of the year, Lamar gets it, wins it going away. Yep. Purdy and Mahomes, who wasn't even in consideration for MVP all year, are the two guys left standing with Mahomes having beaten Lamar. If this year Lamar wins it over Josh and Josh sends him home and it's 3-0, there's going to be a lot of revisionist, do we need to change how we do MVP? There'll be a lot of that. And what I was saying at the end of last year, I think a lot of people will be saying at the end of this year, which is Lamar's probably done winning MVPs until we see him on a deep postseason run. Like, I do think that's what people will say.
It would feel to me just like, I know it's a different round, but just like when Dirk Nowitzki won MVP and got beat by the AC Golden State Warriors in the first round. I know that was the first round, but still, that's what this would feel like. Now, I think those that vote for Lamar you can justify he had the better regular season.
Sure.
Period. Like that's what they'll say. But I do agree there will definitely be a feeling.
A backlash.
And there was last year, in fairness. Yes. But you base it on the regular season play. But there will be a feeling that, no, he won't get another MVP until he wins the Super Bowl.
Texans in Arrowhead. Texans defense great at getting to the QB, which might be the recipe for an upset considering that Mahomes is 6-0 in this round, and Andy Reid is unstoppable after a bye. Andy Reid after a bye lasts 35 years. He's 32-7, which is ranked first. The turnover differential ranked first. We're also counting the bye leading into the Super Bowl week. So, Nick, Andy Reid's going to be good. How do you see this game playing out?
Well, like all these Chiefs playoff openers tend to play out, the game against the Texans last time around, notwithstanding, when they spotted them 24 points just to add the margin of victory or degree of difficulty before going on a 51-7 run. Mahomes will be absolutely perfect on the opening script to start the game, and the Chiefs will jump out to a 7-0 lead. Arrowhead will be freezing cold and unbearably loud, which will lead to some pre-snap issues for the Houston Texans and a quick 3-and-out, 4-and-out, 5-and-out drive. And before you know it, it's 14-0 Kansas City. And then all of a sudden, you're in a drop-back passing game with, by the way, on the other side of the ball is the single most disruptive defender in the league in Chris Jones against a bad interior offensive line. And Joe Mixon, who's been pretty damn important, was not listed on the injury report Tuesday, then limited in practice oddly Wednesday, then did not practice Thursday. So the way I read that is something happened. Joe tweaked something during practice on Wednesday, which is never a good sign. And so a ton of short, quick passes to neutralize the Texans' rushing attack. And on early in the game, on a 3rd and medium, when the Texans have everything covered up, Patrick Mahomes is going to be just fast enough to run past somebody and break your back. Like that, that's how I see this first half playing out. And then if the Texans can claw back, the Chiefs will keep going. And if not, they'll get ready for Buffalo or Baltimore. That's what I see happening.
I agree. I agree with a lot of that. I definitely think the Chiefs come out, first offensive series, they march down the field and score, and then hold, whether they get the ball first or second, they hold Houston on its first possession. And the Chiefs set the tone, and it's a wake-up call for the Texans. I think it's a little closer, 10 points a half. I think the Chiefs end up winning by 10 to 14 points.